Essentially, with the Skilled Iowa initiative, we've had a lot of momentum since the last time we had a meeting. We're gaining a lot of momentum through the summer and the fall by adding new businesses as members and seeing more of our fellow Iowans take the test, the National Career Readiness Certificate. It's been a great way for employers to find qualified workforce. It's also been an opportunity for workers to upgrade their skills. And of course, it's the economic strategy for Iowa's communities, working with our partners within the STEM, working with the Iowa Economic Development, Iowa Department of Education, and of course the Iowa business community, as well as Iowa's educational community and employee groups as well. When we talk about the NCRC, if you remember last time, the testing is comprised of applied mathematics, reading for information, and locating information. And more as Director Whaler, myself, and staff go across and talk to businesses, those are three very critical components that they're looking for many of the companies that have expansion plans and looking for qualified workforce. So we know that the National Career Readiness Certificate truly does measure much of what business is looking for. Like anything else, Governor Branstad, Lieutenant Governor Reynolds, Director Whaler, as well as the rest of our partners are very tuned into metrics. Metrics are extremely important to measure progress. When we talk about skilled Iowa communities, I want to talk just a second about the metrics. What we want to do as we go through Skilled Iowa is have our current labor force certified at 5%, our transitioning labor force certified at 20%, a percentage of total business partnering 10%, and a percentage of employment at 20%. For those communities that have identified themselves as becoming skilled Iowa communities, if they can meet 80% of the metrics I just discussed, they'll have that skilled Iowa community designation. And thus far, since the last time we've talked, we've had a lot of communities come on working towards skilled Iowa designation. Specifically, we've had the Cedar Valley region. In fact, we had a terrific event up there with Governor Branstad right before the Thanksgiving holiday. And that, of course, is comprised of Blackhawk, Bremer, Buchanan, Butler, Chickasaw, Grundy, and Tama counties, Cedar Valley region. We've also got the Greater Des Moines Partnership, encompassing some 8 counties. Then West Des Moines has their own Skilled Iowa Consortium as they work towards designation. In our southeastern section of the state, we're starting to have some very robust conversation with the folks down there about putting together their group. The Iowa Lakes Corridor up in northwest Iowa has been very, very active, encompassing Buena Vista County, Clay County, Dickinson, and Emmett. We had a conversation just yesterday with some of the good work that they're doing. And actually, the Iowa Lakes Corridor is out promoting Skilled Iowa in proactive fashion, signing up people, that specifically being businesses, to be members. Also, Marshall County, Clark County, and Union County have also identified themselves as wanting to pursue that designation. So we're starting to, folks, begin to see that critical mass of having communities want to come on. And of course, they see that as a valuable tool to attract new businesses to the area. They see it as an opportunity to market and promote themselves, and specifically the businesses within their respective areas. Also, it assures potential employers that a skilled workforce does exist, and you can demonstrate what that workforce skill sets are. And of course, there's a lot of economic growth opportunities there. Right now, when we talk about Skilled Iowa membership, we have some 930 companies that have come on as Skilled Iowa members, encompassing some 2,000 locations across the state. And that'll continue to grow. It'll be very, very important for us to track that growth and be able to follow up with those folks as we move forward. The one thing that's very important to Director Whaler and myself is that we start to touch as many industry sectors as we can. Right now in the manufacturing sector, we've got Alcoa and Vermeer, financial services, Wells Fargo. We've got big and small banks and credit unions that have come on board. In the ag sector, we've got John Deere, on Monsanto, Bankers Trust, Ruan. Some of those folks have come on. The other thing that's been very, very much a development since we met last is that the 3 Regent universities have designated themselves as Skilled Iowa members. So they too are joining our effort to make sure that at least one of their job openings, and in many cases many of their job openings, We'll have an NCRC preferred designation on there, or NCRC encouraged to apply, so for many of those job openings. So that's a good thing. And that's piggybacked on Governor Branstad making the State of Iowa Executive Branch a Skilled Iowa member. So as you know, Executive Branch is comprised of some 20,000 employees. You'll start to see the agencies begin to put NCRC encouraged to apply on many of those designations. We're very happy to have all of the community colleges across the state, all 15, in as members. We're also working with our friends in the private college community as well. When we talk about the NCRC test, at last report we've had some 20,000 individuals that have taken it and are working on training plans for internships. I know we talked about the internships the last time we met. And that's got staff working specifically with businesses to develop training plans to ensure a couple things, making sure that the employers that we're working with are good actors that are playing by the rules, and then of course we're meeting the expectations of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and that's important to us. So really trying to link job seekers with businesses on that internship component. And of course some of the folks that have already jumped on board with that is Mid-American Energy, Meredith Corporation, Sioux City Foundry, and Dodgen Industries in Humboldt. And that's just to name a few. I'm sure I missed somebody. Let me transition for just a second on the Skilled Iowa umbrella and talk about our virtual access technology. I know we spent a lot of time talking about our deployment across the state, some 99 counties. We have over 900 locations where we have virtual access technology. That's terrific. But the big improvement we've made so far this year is getting that same technology into our schools. And as all of you know, we've got 348 school districts across the state, comprised of 339 public high schools. Right now, we have a presence in 96% of high schools across the state. And again, that is a voluntary relationship that we've begun to form with the superintendents, principals, and counselors to put our virtual access technology where the kids are, specifically in their buildings, on their technology, on the different platforms that they have. And what we're really seeing on the school front is the technology that our students and teachers and counselors are utilizing is evolving, not so much by the year, but evolving by the semester. And so we need to do the best we can to keep up with that, but that's just a terrific development. The other thing that Teresa has been specific about is making sure that if we have this presence in the high schools, that we also have the proper training for the teachers about what exactly the virtual access tool does. So what we've done is we've developed a 1-hour go-to-meeting training session for teachers so that they can understand the 2 different portals that are dedicated to students, and specifically those are Explore My Skills and I Am a Student portals. And so when you put that out there, you want to put it out there as a tool for many of our young people to be able to understand what job opportunities exist here in the state of Iowa, and what would those types of jobs pay, and what are the requirements that are going to be necessary to be successful in those types of careers. So again, we've got staff across the state that are visiting with schools and teachers and utilizing in-service days to talk to the folks about the virtual access technology. So we've got a lot going on the Skilled Iowa front. We've got a lot more work to do, especially into 2013, as we continue to put the NCRC out there for consumption for all of our fellow Iowans to take, and also to be able to measure themselves, not only in our 19 field locations across the state, but in hopefully many, many more locations, as I had discussed. So that's a mouthful. I digress and open it up to any questions, thoughts, or concerns that you have.
You know that Director Durham, of course, I don't know how many of you know her personally, but she's on the road every day, and she's relentless in visiting with businesses. And we kind of sometimes we can get together and visit companies together, but when we can't, we are both working on the same strategy. And she, I know, is helping in the marketing, because one of the things she hears with all these businesses is where is my workforce for tomorrow and this middle skills gap. I just met with her last night and got another list. She was out in Ames and Newton in that territory, and so with some companies, and so I have another to-do list from Debbie. It's great to get my to-do list from Debbie, but mostly it's about helping to train. A lot of this is training their own workers to actually go in to be able to go into that phase that companies eventually get to, is that technology piece of their business. And so we're actually helping to train workers, but it's also companies are not familiar with tools that we have that could assist them. With this deployment into high schools, high school superintendents are telling me that it's great because it's a common language, and high schoolers do not necessarily have a common language to talk about business requirements, and this helps them with that whole transition because not everyone will necessarily go on to formal education. They perhaps will eventually, and so it's really helped with that translation with another tool. Obviously it's optional, but we will probably be having a couple of more events in December with the governor. And one of those, I think we will be concentrating a lot on the high school involvement with the certification process, training yourself towards a certification process, because that will help. It will obviously help with future training to be successful, but it will also help if you need to have employment for a while before that happens, or for a lifetime. If you're more vocationally oriented than perhaps a 4-year degree. So we're getting a lot of input from the educational side that they really like having an option. And since we renegotiated our contract with ACT, we do have the ability to have test sites in just about any location, but we also have the ability for helping to establish proctors. So, for instance, a high school could proctor the test for any students who are interested, like a sociology class or a capstone class or any kind of application in high school, and we will be able to facilitate the actual teacher being the proctor for the testing process, something that could not have been done before this, but we were able to move ACT on that particular item, as well as these test sites. We have a lot of opportunity to lift up some of those pretty egregious kinds of requirements for a test site, and so we're able to really expand that opportunity so people don't have to travel nearly as far, perhaps, to have the opportunity to be certified. So we just have a lot of work to do to finish it out. My vision is this. I can tell you, I think what's going to happen is, I think that in Iowa, we are going to meet the business metrics pretty quickly, because the large businesses and community businesses really see the advantage of this and helping move our employment base and future employment to being able to enter into middle skills, or at least have the training to start going into these middle skill jobs. I think the difficulty is going to be with the transitioning labor force, which I'll define again as those who are unemployed, those who have run the gamut on their unemployment and perhaps are on some welfare program, and we do several of those welfare programs, and so we are actively embedding the certification process in those programs out of our office. But I think that is going to be the most difficult metric, is to really impact that transitioning workforce. For me, the reason it's so important is because we are trying to help people and train people to give them another marketing piece about themselves. So we're not just helping them get a bus pass if they're on a welfare program and can't have some issue with travel. We're actually helping them with new skills so they can get a higher paying job, so they can actually have a sustainable employment, not just perhaps a temporary one that's got seasonality with it. So that's what our agency now is working very hard on, and that is in the transitioning workforce, to be able to help train them with skill sets that they can really use for a lifetime for sustainable employment and employment at higher levels of opportunity for pay. So, you know, the interesting thing about Skilled Iowa is at the end of the day, it's going to fall back onto our agency to really embed this in the programs that we have to help people and to help train people. And so while we're out and doing businesses and all of those kinds of things, our real challenge is to really get it firmly embedded in the processes that we have ourselves.
I think the challenge too is I'm working with several companies right now. We're trying to get involved with skills. We've been working with them. The challenge is, yes, they could go through the certification process, and they could get there. Are they going to go and there's jobs. We have a number of jobs in Owen, but are they going to go and stay on the job? Are they going to be there on time? And I know that's part of the process, but it is a problem.
It is a problem, and the other problem is, I can tell you, when we were up in Waterloo with the event in Cedar Valley, several businesses said another problem that they have is that people know how to come to work, and there's this 3-day rule on absences, and so they'll come to work sporadically for 2 consecutive days, and then be sure to beat the clock on the third on a 3-day absence thing, and some of that is confusion with how we administer unemployment benefits. So a lot of that particular issue we brought back to the unemployment side of the house for training and that sort of thing. But one of the things, the opportunities we have is once we have people interested in skills, we also go through the soft training requirements. And of course that is, you would think that is obvious for us, but it is a problem that people don't show up, people don't stay, you can't depend on them staying for a job from
Leave
8
at the
to
first
5.
break.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And part of that is, I think, is the richness of all of our unemployment regs and rules. And so I think companies will do exactly what they're told to do on this. And so we need to make sure there's a balance on what the employer does and what the employee does. And there's an understanding, because I don't think there is a good understanding with some businesses. And so we have to help that understanding of what the process is when people are late or when people just don't show up. And we do have that. You're right. I run into a lot of that.
Teresa,
Uh-huh.
I was at the IJAG meeting yesterday, and we were talking about the work keys and the certification and some of those things. And certainly they're teaching soft skills as well as hard skills in the IJAG program, which is good. But the question I have is on the purchase of the testing. 2 things came to my mind just now. Was one, if we can get the testing done with the teacher in the school, does that bring down the cost, or could we negotiate a lesser cost for those students? And then 2, can the student themselves take like an entry kind of work keys skills test and then see where they are so that they've got that year or two left in high school to bring those up. So that's their training part, but to find it out at the end is too late. And that may be a legislative question, I don't know.
No, it's not.
It isn't, okay.
A student can take the test, well, anybody can take the test more than once. So
But at what cost?
the state pays the cost. The
For
student-
both tests?
For both tests.
Okay.
The student does not pay and the school does not pay.
No, I know the school doesn't
We,
pay. I know
we
pay.
have, Workforce Development has a contract with ACT. And so every time we have a student, in this case, take the test, we get the bill for that. We pay that. So the student doesn't pay it. The student we suggest the student go through the key train process, which is the training before you take the test, so you don't just go in and take it cold. But if a student wants to take it when they're a sophomore and then take it when they're a senior, that's fine. They can do that. And they, of course, get to keep the better score, but they do have a chance then to get some feedback on areas that they should improve on, or how they scored and where they scored, so they have time to take other classes while they're still in high school.
That's the intent,
You
certainly.
bet, you bet. And so that's all facilitated. I'll tell you, with our contract with ACT, we do have a volume discount. So the more people utilize the testing process, the more the cost will go down, because we have certain levels that facilitate a lower price, so that we won't have to incur price changes over the next 3 years. We have a 3-year contract. So I think that the company of ACT is working really hard to help us facilitate this as well. And we were able to take about 5 or 6 different contracts, each of which had about 18 amendments on it, and with ACT, and focus it into one singular one that we all know for sure what's in the contract, what the process is, and so they've been really willing to work with us on volume, on pricing, and administration of the test.
Was that a line item in the Iowa budget coming to
No.
workforce?
No, the first, and Steve can vouch for this, the first really round of the pilot sessions that we had a few years ago was really funded by the federal government, but it was funded with an end date of June of last year. And so we had a period of time then that people had to pay for the tests themselves, and we could see an immediate drop-off in the usage of it, obviously. And then we and the community colleges both got together and said, okay, we're going to figure out a different way to pay for this, because we wanted to continue to use it. And that was, of course, before we integrated it all with Skilled Iowa. And so we went to ACT. The line item that you may be thinking of is, at one time, there was amendment to a bill, I think year before last, that specifically said for our state appropriation we could not use state money to fund NCRC, and that was struck out of the final version. So you might be thinking of that, but no, there is not a separate line item. And actually, we are using federal money from several different sources right now for funding the test, and we have checked with DOL and the 2 or 3 different funding sources we think ought to be available to use this, and they have agreed with us. So sustainability is a question. You know, is this the project of the day, and then tomorrow the funding will end on it, so where are you left? That's why we went to some of these recurring funding streams, so that we have some kind of confidence that it is sustainable. Now, there's nothing preventing us from using state funds, but we want to use state funds for other items as well.
You can get program money.
Correct, correct,
elsewhere.
yeah, so that's how it's done. Yeah.
Is there any high school that is just a matter of standard practice, they're encouraging all their students to take the skills certification?
I think as they are learning about the certification, they're not making it mandatory, but they are highly encouraging it. The superintendents will say it's a way that for some students who may not be college bound or community college bound, for them to make a difference on their resume, and that's really a good self-esteem thing for them to be able to offer something else on their resume, a nationally recognized certificate. And I can tell you, I agree with everything Ed said, obviously, but the schools are in that learning process. The high schools are, and we see different applications all the time, and so it will be interesting when I give you an update in another 3 months, because we're also watching activity. You know, we're seeing how much it's used, and we can track that. And so I would expect, much like the virtual technology, you have it in for a while, and then, you know, the dots are all clicking, and people really understand then the value, and it drastically changes the utilization.
Many of us are now talking about requiring the NCRC for all of our graduates that go into our, let's just focus on our current technical ed programs as an example.
Yeah.
We did that several years ago, really just to find out how are we doing as an institution in those programs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a research tool for us to let us know where in the curriculum are we falling short in terms of helping these students gain those particular skills. So that would be a second group. Third group would be two, Jeremy, that you'd be interested in as well. One would be the adult basic ed folks, because we just talked about that, to make sure that they understand the aspects of that. And the other would be the community college continuing ed deans and directors, who the group that are implementing the new gap tuition assistance program and our short-term skills certificates. Some of us already require, as I think we did with the all-week program through the ABE program, required the NCRC as part of that process. But I'm not going to assume that everybody is. And those are four.
Can you help facilitate getting us in front of those groups?
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, we can. Jeremy and I and I'll work with our colleagues. We'll get the upcoming dates of those.
Yeah, that would be great.
Many times they're meeting on a monthly basis or every other month kind of a basis, so there's plenty of entry points.
Okay,
and
great.
they typically are going to be here, so it's easily accessible for us.
Okay, that's
Get happy
great.
to do that.
Perfect.
I have a question. On your test level, and you guys may have said this before, what level is that on? Is there different levels for
There's
the
4 different levels.
Yes, I knew that, but I mean, is it like a 9th grade level for math, or 10th grade level for math, 12th grade level
Oh,
for math?
it's not translated that in that way, because there's a lot of 9th grade level math. You know, you can have algebra, you can have basic math, you can. Maybe what your question is, how does that translate back to the core?
Yes, like if I went back to the sponsors that I work with, and I say, well, if someone were to come to you with a goal, that would mean that would be about a 12th grade reading level, a 9th grade reading level. What, just to say they have a gold certificate, what does that mean to my employers?
Okay, well,
As far as education.
as far as education, so that's one thing that we have not done, is track it back, and that's a good suggestion. We'll track it back through the Department of Ed to get their input, because obviously they're the ones to tell us where it tracks back to. But we do have some information that shows you if you have a bronze level, what does that mean in math? What kinds of skills do you have if you're at a bronze? And what kind of additional skills in math do you have if you're a silver or a gold? So we can translate it to skills and job performance, like what kinds of tasks on a job does a gold certificate say Or is that a substantiation that they can do this kind of work? So we can.
And that's on the certificate itself, correct?
Yeah, it's on this, yeah, and so we'll send that, and we'll get that to you and all the board members. But we haven't done that other translation that I think would be a good one.
Well, and the reason I ask that is because I, like everybody probably in here, hear from employers all the time. We can't get the word out, we can't say, can't do this, we can't do that. So with the skilled Iowa certificate, which is a very good thing, but if we're not relating that back to the quality that's coming out of our education system, isn't that like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it? If we're not saying that these are the skills that employers are looking for, how are we saying that these are the skills that we need to make sure that our school education system is providing?
Correct.
And
we can work that translation that way.
okay, and that's it was my other question then. As far as scoring gold, silver, platinum, do you equate that to, do you do any kind of tracking through like the labor market where these kids or students are taking it, what schools they graduated from?
We do that for schools if they ask us to. We have the statistical information to track that. We also have the statistical information to say what your earning potential is if you're a certificate, a gold certificated person versus a bronze versus a none. So we can actually demonstrate the change in your earning capacity because we've been tracking people, obviously, who have earned the certificate, and we can track their change in earning power. So that's another piece of information we can give to schools if they want to know that. So they can say to a student, if you at least go through the work of getting yourself certified in high school, you can expect that you're going to earn X amount more as far as a job, a long-term job, than not. And so we're comparing that to than not. We do a lot of that tracking for community colleges, demonstrating the difference of if you have a community college a degree versus nothing, what that change in earning capacity is. We can also do it for four-year institutions. Some of the private colleges contract with us to do that for them, and they use that as part of the marketing. Come to my school, because if you come to my school, this is what the data tells us will help get you to the point where you can earn this amount more in your earning capacity. So we do have that, and we can give that to schools if they're interested.
I think that's great. I think actually that information to the Department of Education should be given.
Yeah.
Because if everybody, I'll use Ankeny because that's where I live, if you're finding out that 98% of the people who take that test from Ankeny High School can't pass it, that's a problem.
Correct.
And employers are quick to touch that school. To me, that's the Department of Education where this should be tracked. If we're tracking people who are receiving 50% for skilled workers, and we're graduating people from high schools that can't pass the test from workforce,
Totally agree.
that's the Department of Education.
Totally agree. So it's a new source of information and data.
Yeah, not just to the school for gee whiz, we didn't like to know. I mean, this to me would be a statewide information, and it may motivate the schools too to take a look at their curriculum.
I think it will.
And so therefore, maybe there won't be a need for this program 10 years from now because the schools have finally started listening to businesses and they're adapting their curriculum to make skilled workers who or students who can graduate who can become skilled workers.
Yeah.
But it seems to me there's no connection to we're testing these people, and those who don't pass, we're not tying it back to the education system at all.
Well, we are, but not in the degree that you have suggested. And so I think that's a good output that we can at least give to the director of education and Jeremy, obviously your group as well, which is kind of a report card on the education system.
Exactly.
So if you have 100 students in your school opted to take the test, and 10 of them passed and 90 of them didn't, then there's an issue with just basic education.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's another flip side on all of this, and the employers, when they're certifying and advertising, they're advertising by the level of education that a applicant needs to have. So you may have an applicant that is high in the reading skills but low in the math skills, and so when they advertise, they can advertise, we need people with math of the bronze level, not much math as compared to. So it works out that way, and when you say in 10 or 15 years perhaps we won't be doing this, I think the businesses, once they get involved in all of this, they're going to say, this helps me and my resource folks so much that I advertise and don't send me anybody that doesn't meet this level.
And I agree. Here's my concern, is that eventually is that we are going to have people who graduate from Ankeny High School who can get a, I'm using who can get a platinum. People who may be graduating from the Des Moines School can. Are we going to say that all of those people now have to be low-skilled workers because we're depending upon the certificate and we never tied it back to the education system so that we could correct this on the onset?
No, I take that point. That's a good point.
You know.
And just be sure not to lose sight of the flip side of
and I think that's
job.
wonderful. And I think it's really, to me, I like this. I like what the certificate says. I just don't see a real strong tie in how do we make sure that from the very beginning, not from the hind end, that we're involving the education system on this, because I don't want to see 5 years from now a group of people who can't become apprentices because they can't.
Right.
They don't have a gold certificate, and nobody ever addressed that at the beginning.
And I can,
ACT is
I can tell
education.
you that part of the challenge is obviously tracking it back to the education, but it's also training the teachers to tell the teachers this is what business hires do. A lot of teachers don't know that, and it's not because they are stupid, it's because they have not had access to that information.
And you hit the nail on the head right there, which is really good. Because that's what we find with the education system.
Yeah, and that's why we developed the special training, the special go-to training, just for teachers, so that they're in an environment where there's other teachers taking it with them. It's obviously they don't have to travel anywhere. They can take it at their desk or take it in a group setting with other folks. I envision that training will also need to progress into more sophisticated training. But we have already seen some teachers who have been working with us, and they're throughout the state, so they're scattered everywhere, who are actually changing the way they teach a subject because they really want the student to understand this piece or that piece of the subject because they know that that's applicable for when they go to try to get themselves certified.
Yeah,
One of the things that I think you need to keep in mind is this is just not a vocational sort of level. It requires pretty high level
It does.
skill, so it isn't just dumbing down the system just to get a certificate.
That's right.
It's raising the.
That's right.
And the second thing is that it's been our entree into the school system to really have a meaningful discussion about the skills needed. And we've always struggled with how to present that, to understand what those skills are in a way that they can do something about it within the system. And I think
It's a common language that you
It's a much more common language, and that's helpful in our opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to the director's point just a minute ago, I think, pilots we were running is we're doing post-testing and pre-testing and post-testing of some core groups of our in our business and IT areas to see what kind of progress our students were making just through their normal course of being with us for 2 years in those curriculums. The thing is, you can put applied math aside because obviously math instruction is something we struggle with all of our students, but the locating information and reading information aren't necessarily courses that you're going to develop. It's got to be integrated into every curriculum. Every teacher, every faculty member has to understand that they have to organize their curriculum and deliver it in such a way that the students are developing those skills by virtue of what how they're being asked to basically navigate their way through the class. So, yeah, to your point.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
And
so
that's what I'm saying,
I
if we don't tie it back,
Yeah.
and we don't realize that all the kids from Ankeny who produce very bright children or graduates, but can't pass this test,
Yeah,
that we've lost something
Yeah.
in doing
Well, and the
this.
important thing too is unlike the ACT college entrance exam, which really doesn't have a remedial component to it.
Right.
I mean, other than paying big bucks to go,
Take the class.
yeah, take classes to help get yourself up to speed. But the Workies and the NCRC does. And so, again, a lot of this has to do with timing in terms of when you administer the test. That would be true in the high schools in particular. Try to identify, much like we're now trying to encourage as many of our high schools as we can to allow us to administer the ACT Compass Placement Exam at the sophomore level, so that we can identify those students who are probably going to have problems coming out the other end, so that we can provide in concert with those high schools the remediation necessary to make sure that they are performing at a level that they're ready to go into the workforce or they're ready to go, on to post-secondary education. So it's a system, clearly a system kind of approach, and this is a really important aspect of that, no question about it.
Ed, thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was very thorough report. And it's obviously generated a lot of conversation. But I'm curious, I got lost in some of it, because at one point it seemed like Sally was talking about, and it is a problem, that at least I've experienced, with people just having the basic skills to get up in the morning and go to work. And so I think, when the director, you actually kind of got into two different subjects there. But don't we teach that at the IWD, at our workforce centers?
yes.
That's part of that, is this
Yes.
is a responsibility, this is,
Yes.
you don't go to work where.
We call Alice's soft skills.
Yeah.
So you have
but
to know how to have a
teach-
conversation,
you have to know how to-
what to wear.
Yeah, get up in the morning and be there.
Right.
Now, the concern I have with these certificates, and I'm not doubting them at all, but I think Greer brought up a little sentence that maybe somebody didn't catch, but myself or my brother, Mr. Gilmore over here, Brother Gilmore, she said a certificate to go into an apprenticeship. And that's where my concern is. You said that. And that's where my concern is, because when we test this for these, for these skills and the education factor, I don't think we've ever had this discussion before, at least the movies I've seen, where we retro back to see they took the test and they tested it at a silver level, so that means they're at an 11th grade level, or they tested the bronze and they're at this area they're at an 8th grade level. I don't think we've ever had this discussion. It's very good. But the certificate, the thing that still bothers me is college, whether it's community college or whatever, the community college degree to go on to a 4-year and so on. Is it for everybody?
No.
How do we transcend this into the trades apprenticeship programs? For instance, Bob really represents painters and allied trades. It's a huge thing. And Roberts comes in here, he's the plumbers. Greer works with many of them, all of them, on their apprenticeships. How do we transcend these certificates that you test for as a junior in high school into the apprenticeship of, I'm going to speak a little bit from personal experience. I tried to paint the bathroom. Well, 3 weeks later, I called Bob, and I said, "You got anybody on the..." And he sends a lady over, one of his journeyman painters, and she painted my entire house in a week. There was no drop cloths, there was no taping off, none of that. I mean, I'm just sitting there watching, because she learned. So my question becomes, how do we transcend that silver certificate as a junior in high school into that trade apprenticeship of being a machinist, being a tool and die, being a trade worker of some sort, being because college isn't for everything.
No, that's correct.
And electricians, plumbers, the allied trades. These are skills, highly trained people. How do we transcend that into, is there an opening or an avenue or a venue that says, you don't want to go to college, but you're testing at a silver level, and that's going to transcend, and look what that door opens up for you. It opens up for you to go to the, are you interested in being a plasterer? Are you interested in being an electrician, being interested in, because frankly, folks, if we're going to do economic development, we're going to have all this infrastructure, and that's where this is all going to come from. You've got to have these people first. You know, the world needs ditch diggers too.
The reason that, Greg, that we selected this process as really the very basic fundamental process is because it does not necessarily translate into college educated or community college. It gives people the understanding that some of the basic knowledge they need to have to be a plumber, to be a tradesperson, in any of those distinguished trades is going to require some level of competency so that you know how to read, so that you know how to find information, if it's telling you how to paint something, or how to decide how much paint do you buy to paint something.
Well, there's the key that you just said, Director. You said information. So this is going to, I'm looking for that avenue that says I tested as a silver, or I tested as a gold, or whatever, bronze. But at this, I can transfer this. And now, because I've got this, because I did this, now on this side of the screen it says you might want to look at.
We have that.
Being an accounting too.
We have that translation, so we can say to a student, you may not want to go on at this point in your life to more formal education when you get out of school, but because you know where you're certified at for the business community, this will be a gateway and a resume builder for you to apply for degrees or for trades opportunities, and then those people who want to hire you know what kind of proficiency you have to be able to learn more about that trade and be successful in that trade.
I think you're answering my question, but in a way that you can take this certificate and you can take it to Bob's apprenticeship committee.
Yes.
How that works and say, look, I've already tested
Yes.
at this level.
Yes.
So here's my resume to get into your apprenticeship.
Correct.
Yeah, let me add something we haven't talked about, Greg, is that the ACT work keys process also involves job profiling. And so essentially they would conduct a profile process of, let's say, 10 or 20 journeyman electricians, and they're going to take the NCRC, and they're going to know that to be successful in that profession at that level would require the silver level of the NCRC and maybe all three of the NCRC assessment components.
Steve, your journeyman electrician, coming through your courses or your machinist courses, which I'm not faulting, but when I became a journeyman machinist, it took 7 years inside a shirt factory. 2 years in a classroom, they come in, they're like 1 year, we give them a 1 year credit.
Yeah,
we might go to a 3 year level.
We're talking about not foundational employability skills, which the NCRC is assessing. We're talking about the technical skills necessary to do that job effectively. What the NCRC is another additional indicator of success, if you will, if one look at it another way. So,
I'm looking at the NCRC as a way indicator of success, which is going to tell this group when I go to the electricians union, when I go to the IBW and I apply for their apprenticeship program, or I go to the carpenters, or I go to the plumbers, or I go to the allied trades, or I go to any of them, the machinist, or any of them, when I apply, even when I go to Greer,
Correct.
And what kind, because we're
Correct.
apprenticeship program, we have now.
Yeah.
Dedicated, I mean, she sends out those. and that's gonna give them that leg up, I think. Yeah,
Correct.
and that's what I'm looking for. How does that transcend
Correct.
that information that says, because you got this,
You
Steve,
have that
you were talking
leg up.
about the job program, you might wanna look at.
Yes.
Well, and that's basically where
Yes.
you would derive the ranking that you were
Correct,
referencing.
and we have that, but what we are just beginning, there's just not enough time in the day to hit everybody's time, but we are just beginning now, and you will get calls from us in even taking the certification process and the ski train and all the remediation work associated with it to trade organizations to say you may even want for your membership to say if you're really interested in this or that, because it doesn't cost anything for that organization. We're starting the process now to call organizations to say, do you want to use it as a tool for your membership? Because we'd be more than happy to set that up for
It
you.
would look like it's a nice resume.
Well, sure. And
So
why
you're
would you
gonna
want to
sort
do that?
Contacting,
We already have.
they already have contacted Bob?
Well, they went out to the coordinators meeting.
Okay, that's
we
the
said-
building
The
coordinator.
building, right, well,
We are.
yeah, they have a representative.
Yeah, so yeah, we're gonna talk to all of you individually about it. And we talked with Greer, how to embed it in her
And that's
process,
part
and
of
now
the
we're gonna
apprenticeship
be
program.
calling all of the trades organizations.
Yeah, that's what we,
Yeah, so it will, my vision is this, it will help, if we're talking about the kid population, let's say 20 and under. A lot of kids don't like school, they don't have any intention, I mean, I know, I had kids, they really don't give a rip about whether they go to college yet or not, and they don't know what they're gonna do, but my goal is to get them off the payroll, that would be my payroll. And so I always encourage them to fine-tune some of their skills so they can get some kind of a job. And they'll learn as they get older what they're interested in more so. And they develop differently. And some will end up saying after 3 or 4 or 5 years, I think I need to go get more formal education. Some will really like the area that they get into. And it gives them an alternative to have a greater earning potential on their resume. And that's our whole goal, is to work in that customer segment of 20 and under. It's just to help them with that step in their life so that they can be a contributing person in society and they can get a job and a meaningful job, and they can always decide if they want to go on for more formal education. So it's really, I think, helping for kids that piece. It's helping for older people organize themselves so they can be what they want to be. So if they want to be in trades, I think that's great, because I'll still tell you, you'll earn much more money in today's world being in trades than you will having a bachelor's degree in art history. I mean, yes, it is a fact. It's a hard fact too. And so we're trying to assist in that process as well with the resume builder.
I'd like to add a couple things that stem from this. And nearly 30 years ago, when I entered the military, they tested everybody. And they took your results and they gave you jobs. They said, this is really kind of where you need to go. Those that tested well in areas, they recruit into these. Here we are 30 years later, and this is a similar process that allows us to say, okay, this is kind of where we're at. The one thing I would add, and we have over 200 apprentices currently in our organization going through training, anywhere from, depending on where the credit they may receive, either from a community college and or experience in the field, 1,000 to 8,000 hours of training. And but in the very near future, I'm not going to have workers. 5 years from now, I'm going to be competing in the industries that I represent with everybody, community colleges and other businesses, the types of folks that are going to do the work that we train in and that we provide. And so, I have 5 children, and some are in college, some are still in high school, some are working, some have been in the trades. And this type of testing, or this certification, the question I would have is does everybody, so let's say you're a 4.0 student, 3.5, whatever that is this type of testing is this necessary to assist these individuals in, who are probably going to move up, higher education as a general rule, most of those folks will seek out and have job performance. Is this something that is necessary? Is this something that everybody does? Is this something that...
I think at the end of the day, to answer your question, it's something that gives great input to every single student, whether you're a 4.0 or 2.0. And because you can be a 4.0 and be absolutely clueless as to what to do when you get out and get a job. And this gives that feedback early in high school that says, well, you might think you're really smart and you get straight A's, but if you can't apply that math to a real situation, or if you're really good at texting and you think you're great at looking for information, but you can't get past a certain level in the NCRC, which is what businesses are looking for in that application. It's much more application to the business world oriented. And so, yeah, I can tell you a lot of kids get out of college with a 4.0 and don't know how to work. And so this helps that whole translation.
Thank you. Just another question. Have you given any thought of administering the NCRC to those 200 premises you're working with right now?
Yeah, I have. I mean, actually, to be quite honest, this is something I'm just really learning about, and going to ask a question to some of my daughters. They've been doing this, and I'm not even aware of it. I'm just out of the loop of what's going on in high schools and these processes and
We should
going
probably,
to college.
can you make some time for us on your schedule so we could actually come to your site and kind of talk about it? We can demo it for you and show you what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think what that would do, you've got a very consistent kind of cohort group there. I think what you learn from that is those individuals transition through their apprenticeship program into journeyman status. It's probably going to be informative to you in terms of those that successfully navigated their way through there, where they scored on that NCRC, which then informs you when you've got a new crop of applicants coming in to apply for apprenticeship program. That's kind of those cut scores, because it's going to vary by position and whatever, and this would be a great opportunity to kind of set your own benchmarks.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions?
So as you can tell, we have a lot of work.
And we've done a lot, too. Give these folks credit for what we have already accomplished. Moving on, we have